I apologize. I do not want to live in a country where any time a citizen or a corporation does something that is legitimately wrong is subject to some sort of political pressure that is, again, in my words, amounts to a shakedown. So I apologize.
When Congressman Joe Barton opened his mouth to say that a week ago today, it turned into a gusher of black gold for Democrats. And what's amazing is Democrats recognize the political opportunity that Joe Barton gave them, and they have run with it.
Republicans call BP's escrow fund a
shakedown
and
extortion.
So I apologize.
Apologizing to big oil. This is how Republicans would govern.
Democrats recognizing a political opening and moving to take advantage of it? Whoa. But what's just as amazing as Democrats having that kind of political savvy is that Republicans really appear not to have savvy about this. This is a genuine surprise to me. After taking a week's worth of beating on the Joe Barton issue, on Joe Barton's behalf, Republicans have now rewarded him. They are letting him keep his seat as the ranking Republican on the House Energy and Commerce Committee, a position Republicans will, I guess, enjoy defending from now until November. Kind of like what House Republican Whip Eric Cantor had to go through on MSNBC's Morning Joe this morning.
Joe Barton's not the issue. You know,
well,
Joe Barton apologized.
He kind of is, though. If he's the most powerful Republican right now on the Hill when it comes to energy, he is the issue, isn't he?
No, he's not. I mean, some people want to make Joe Barton the issue when the issue, as you say, are the beaches in Pensacola and the economy that is being battered and the environmental disaster of epic proportions in the Gulf. That's the issue. And how do we stop this gushing of oil? That's the issue, not Joe Barton.
Not Joe Barton. We're just keeping him as the top Republican on energy in the House in the hopes that you'll stop asking us this question? Meanwhile, Republican Congressman Joe Uli Wilson, another congressman famous for not being afraid to speak his mind, defended his colleague to roll call today, saying, quote, his statements were largely taken out of context. Largely taken out of context. What context could that be other than he apologized to the company that is dumping oil into the Gulf of Mexico? He's apologizing to the underwater volcano of oil company. He said he was sorry that the government expected them to pay for the damage. What context makes that okay? Not only is Joe Barton keeping his powerful committee post, not only are Republicans defending him in public, he is so not a pariah over this that Joe Barton is actually being touted, I kid you not, as a special guest at a fundraiser for one of his fellow Republicans, for Republican Congressman Cliff Stearns of Florida. Yes, Mr. Apologize to BP himself is not only keeping his gig as the top House Republican on energy, he is being touted as a special guest, as the draw at an event designed to raise campaign money. What should be even more politically damaging than doing fundraising with Joe Barton? How about this? How about fundraising directly with BP? Cut out the middleman. That is what Republicans Marsha Blackburn and Eric Paulson did this afternoon. They held a $1,000 a plate lunch for a Republican candidate for Congress, Cory Gardner of Colorado. On this invitation, you see Dan Meyer there. Dan Meyer, lobbyist for BP. So instead of running from all things BP, Republicans are sidling up. That's one side of the Republican Party's response to the BP oil disaster. They also say that the White House standing up to BP, the White House getting money for Americans victimized by BP, is a bad thing. And not just a bad thing, but a really bad thing, like a Nazi Hitler bad thing. Tuesday night, Congressman Louis Gohmert of Texas took to the floor of the House to compare President Obama to Adolf Hitler because he stood up to BP.
When Adolf Hitler was building up the Nazi movement in the 1920s, and I'm quoting from Thomas Sowell in his editorial, leading up to his taking power in the 1930s, he deliberately sought to activate people who did not normally pay much attention to politics. Such people were a valuable addition to his political base, since they were particularly susceptible to Hitler's rhetoric and had far less basis for questioning his assumptions or his conclusions. Useful idiots was the term, and this isn't in the article, this is my comment, but we do have useful idiots today who are heard to say wow, what we really need is for the president to be a dictator for a little while. They know not what they say.
Actually, nobody knows of whom you speak, Mr. Strawman. Republicans from Louis Gohmert to Joe Barton, on the other hand, do know what they say on this oil issue, and it's remarkably politically toxic. What are Democrats going to say in response? Joining us now is Democratic Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz of Florida. Congresswoman, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me, Rachel.
Is there an open door to push on here in terms of energy policy, in terms of legislation? Don't Democrats want Republicans to keep talking about oil as much as possible between now and November?
Well, this is a party that is proving every single day that they worship at the altar of big oil and special interests. And, what's incredibly disturbing is that is not just that Joe Barton apologized to BP or that that they left him in place as the ranking member, but that if the Republicans in November took over the House of Representatives, he would be the chair of the Energy and Commerce Committee and would be directing energy policies. So when it comes to legislation, what we need to be focusing on and what there has what this oil disaster, if you can find a silver lining at all, has resulted in is the American people coalescing and beginning to recognize that we have to wean ourselves off our dependence on oil, not just foreign oil, but oil, and pass legislation that will help us invest in renewable energy sources. I mean, that is the way, that is the key to our long-term energy needs.
On the Joe Barton issue, I don't believe that he would be chair of Energy and Commerce if he came back because of the way they rotate those chairmanships, if nothing else. But it is, I mean, he is being touted as a marquee fundraiser for them at this point, which I just wonder. Remember after Joe Wilson yelled, "You lie" at the president, and everybody was horrified and he apologized?
There, I remember.
Yeah, and then he raised all of this money off of it. Is it possible that he becomes like a weird anti-hero for this?
This is a party that has no shame, so absolutely. I mean, these are leaders that will use any opportunity to raise money and who have no shame. And really, if you look at the comments, not just of Joe Barton, but of Willie Gohmert and Trent Franks and Michelle Bachmann and Tom Price and a litany of Republican members who not only rushed to Joe Barton's defense, but rushed to BP's defense. I mean, this is, Joe Barton was just the tip of the iceberg. You have a Republican conference in the House of Representatives that has consistently been coming to the defense of BP. What about coming to the defense of the residents of the Gulf Coast? What about the defense of the environment? What about the defense of the animals that are coated in oil as a result of this spill? And what about making sure that we can get this thing capped so that eventually we can actually clean it up and the residents of the Gulf Coast? I'm from a Gulf Coast state, Rachel. I represent the southeast side of Florida, but we're really worried that as the oil begins to spread, it's already beginning to happen on the Gulf on the Panhandle. We're very worried about it wrapping itself around our peninsula and affecting the East Coast. So this is a party that, when it comes to apologies, needs to be apologizing to the fishermen who, as a result of their lax regulation, as a result of them letting the oil industry mind their own store, ended up in this situation.
Florida Democratic Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, thank you for being here. And if that oil does get into the loop current and head toward your district, I hope that you'll help us get the word out about what you need in order to defend your space.
You can be sure. Thank you so much, Rachel.
You, tonight on Countdown, Keith asks Jeremy Scahill why our government keeps giving really big, fat, rich contracts to the company formerly known as Blackwater. Later on this show, among the things that President Obama and the rest of us can control about our wars is the way we treat and interact with the people who are risking and sometimes giving their lives to fight those wars. Thoughts on that, some rather serious thoughts on that, I confess, coming up. Stay with us.